What did Jesus know about Satan that almost no one realizes? There are shocking truths about the enemy that few understand, and this could be affecting your life right now. Satan does not act the way you imagine. He infiltrates, manipulates, and deceives without you even noticing. But Jesus revealed powerful secrets about this invisible battle, and when you understand them, everything starts to make sense. Do you want to know these 4 shocking facts about Satan? Stay until the end, because what you will discover here may transform the way you see this spiritual war. Now tell me, are you ready to understand what Jesus knew? What if I told you that there is something most people ignore about Satan? Something that Jesus knew, which completely changes how we perceive spiritual warfare. The truth is that many underestimate the enemy's influence or believe he is merely a symbolic figure with no real impact on daily life. But Jesus made it clear, Satan is real, active, and has well-defined strategies to divert, deceive, and destroy. The problem is that few understand how he operates. Have you ever noticed how some difficulties seem to come in a sequence, as if planned? Have you ever felt doubts and guilt that seem to suffocate your faith? This does not happen by chance. Satan knows how to manipulate situations, influence thoughts, and weaken the faith of believers. But Jesus revealed shocking truths about him, and when you understand these truths, everything starts to make sense. Today, we will explore 4 facts that Jesus taught us about the evil one, things that most people don't realize, but can completely change how you deal with the trials and temptations of life. So get ready, because what you are about to learn may transform your perspective on this invisible battle and on how to overcome it. Since ancient times, the battle between good and evil has manifested in the human journey. Jesus referred to Satan as the enemy in Matthew 13:39, highlighting his subtle yet devastating actions in the lives of believers. He does not appear in an obvious way, but infiltrates like weeds among the wheat, trying to undermine faith, plant doubts, and divert hearts from the right path. The great trap is that he does not present himself as a monstrous being, but as something seductive, offering quick and fleeting satisfaction. This adversary has a well-crafted plan to deceive, divide, and weaken spiritually. He sows discord even within churches, turning small misunderstandings into major divisions. Have you ever noticed how sometimes a simple disagreement can drive someone away from faith? This is the weeds among the wheat, subtle and destructive. And without vigilance, many fall into this trap, thinking they are in control when, in reality, they are being led away from the truth. The only way to avoid falling into this game is by strengthening yourself spiritually. Just as a farmer must know how to distinguish wheat from weeds to protect his harvest, a Christian must discern truth from lies, and this is only possible through sincere pursuit of God, prayer, and knowledge of the Word. After all, the battle is not just physical but spiritual, and those who are not prepared become vulnerable to the attacks of this enemy. But this fight is far from over because he still acts as the prince of this world. Jesus made it clear that Satan has temporary dominion over the earth, calling him the prince of this world in John 12:31. This means he exerts influence over systems, ideologies, and even people, leading many into deception. Just look around: corruption, injustice, the destruction of values. None of this happens by accident. There is a strategic plan to distance people from the truth and keep them trapped in a false sense of freedom. But this influence, no matter how strong it seems, is not permanent. The crucifixion and resurrection of Christ marked a turning point. It was then that Satan suffered the greatest defeat in history. His dominion was shaken and his fate sealed. However, he still acts, trying to take as many people as possible with him before the final judgment. He is like a dethroned king who refuses to leave the palace, trying to manipulate his subjects to maintain his power. Those who do not realize this end up being influenced without even noticing. But here's an important detail: Christians are not defenseless. Jesus won this battle and gave his followers authority to resist. That is why it is not enough to just be a good person. You must discern what is behind things, seek wisdom, and be spiritually prepared. The enemy knows where to attack, and he often starts where we are most vulnerable. And Peter was a living example of this. Jesus gave Peter a serious warning in Luke 22:31. Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. This metaphor is powerful. Sifting wheat means shaking it to separate what is pure from what is impure. In other words, Satan wanted to test Peter to the fullest, pushing him to his limit to see if his faith would endure. And this desire wasn't just about Peter. It reflects the very strategy Satan still uses today, putting believers to the test, making them question their beliefs and, if possible, making them give up their faith. And indeed, Peter wavered. At the moment of greatest pressure, he denied Jesus 3 times, not because he wanted to, but because he was overcome by fear. Who has never felt pressured to the point of doubting their own convictions? The enemy knows exactly where and when to attack. He waits for moments of vulnerability, whether it's a financial crisis, a family problem, or a deep disappointment, and then launches his assaults. The question is, how do we respond in these moments? The good news is that Jesus already knew Peter would fall, but he also knew that Peter would rise again. Christ's intercession ensured that his faith would not be destroyed. And this same principle applies to everyone who faces trials. Falling can happen, but staying down is a choice. Satan may try to sift, but those who stand firm in the truth will always rise again. And that's where a crucial role comes in, the power of intercession. From the very beginning, Satan has presented himself as the great accuser. In Zechariah 3:1 and 1 Peter 5:8, we see this dark figure standing to point out failures, expose weaknesses, and sow guilt in the hearts of believers. He knows that when a person feels condemned, it is easier to make them give up on their faith. Who hasn't heard that internal voice saying, "You're not good enough," or "God won't forgive you this time"? That doesn't come from God. It is the enemy's strategy to drive people away from grace. The accuser doesn't just highlight mistakes, he distorts the truth. He wants people to focus so much on their failures that they forget about divine mercy. But Jesus, on the other hand, intercedes for us. He does not ignore our mistakes, but he offers redemption and restoration. While the enemy tries to trap people in their past, Christ calls them to a new beginning. That's why one of the greatest spiritual challenges is learning to discern this internal battle and reject the lies that try to paralyze us. After all, spiritual warfare doesn't just take place in dramatic supernatural events. It happens in daily life, in our choices, in the voices we choose to listen to. While Satan accuses, Christ intercedes. While the enemy wants to trap us in guilt, Jesus calls us to freedom. And this battle doesn't end here, because there is something even deeper we need to understand about the final destiny of this accuser. Now that you know these shocking facts about Satan, the question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you just let it pass, or will you use it to strengthen your faith and guard yourself against the enemy's traps? Because one thing is certain, this spiritual war is not optional. Whether we like it or not, we are all in it. The difference is that some are prepared and others don't even realize they're under attack. So how can you prepare? Start by strengthening your spiritual life. Pray with more intentionality. Read the word deeply, not just out of obligation. And above all, don't fall into the trap of guilt and discouragement. Jesus has already won this battle, and if you stand firm in him, you can withstand any attack from the enemy. But the decision is yours. Will you remain vulnerable, or will you take your stand? If this message helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with more people. Let's learn, grow, and strengthen ourselves spiritually together, because this battle is real, and victory only comes to those who are prepared.